history of Knott's Scary Farm, Ted Dougherty.
Can you hear me? Hi. Oh my gosh, it's so wonderful to see all of you. Thank you so much. You know, right outside those doors, I spent several seasons as one of the sliding monsters in the Ghost Town Scare Zone, and I loved every single second of it. But nowadays, I write and help create the nightmares behind these Knott's Scary Farm attractions. But I'm also a historian. I wrote this book on the history of Knott's Scary Farm. And thank you. It's available over at the Legacy store if you're interested. But you know, this event is very near and dear to my heart, which is why it's such an honor to be here with all of you at the world-famous Birdcage Theater to help kick things off for the 50th anniversary of Knott's Scary Farm. Are you excited? Well, tonight we're going to celebrate some of the past highlights of Knott's Scary Farm, kind of show how we got to where we are today, and then we're going to talk about some of the announcements we just made and how some of those attractions tie back to the event's history. So, since we're all here for this announcement event, I'm guessing we're all fellow fans of Knott's Scary Farm, but perhaps you're not as familiar with what the event was like before you started going. Unless you went to year one. Anybody go to year one? Not one. We had one person in the last group. Well, for all of us then, you know, you may be a little bit curious as to what the event was like before you started going. So to kick things off tonight, we're going to give a mini, very brief crash course on the history of Knott's Scary Farm. Like I said, I wrote this big old book, so I'm not going to ramble on forever about it. This is going to be rapid fire to help make sure we're all up to speed and help you understand and appreciate even more the wonderful surprises we have in store for you this season. And by the way, if you've seen these presentations in the past, that's awesome. But I'm going to be sharing some photographs of Knott's Scary Farm that have never been published before during this presentation. So it's going to be a little bit different. It's going to go by fast. So strap yourselves in. Let's get this thing started. If you want to bring down the lights a little bit. All right. So Knott's Scary Farm did debut in 1973. And Knott's Scary Farm is indeed the longest running Halloween themed event at any theme park in the entire world. All others trace their roots back to Knott. Now, throughout the years, a lot of people have asked me, how did the event begin? And there's a lot of factors that go into all of that, but generally speaking, I narrowed it down to one person. That person was an actor named Larry Vincent, who portrayed a character named Seymour, Master of the Macabre, also known as Sinister Seymour. He was a very famous television horror host here in Southern California in the early 1970s. And his shows consisted of B horror movies, and Seymour would periodically interrupt the film and crack jokes about how terrible these movies are. He affectionately referred to his fans, his viewers, as fringies, because they were on the fringe of lunacy for liking such terrible, trashy films. Now, to promote his TV shows, he took it on the road and performed it live at local movie theaters here in Southern California. And the format would be pretty much the same as his TV show, but in front of a live audience. So there'd be a horror movie up on the big screen, and we'll see more be there live and in person cracking jokes about these movies. He took that concept to a couple local theme parks here in Southern California, but the venues were not ideal. They didn't really lend themselves to the eerie environment that matched Sinister Seymour. So in the process of looking for a new and improved venue, Seymour's people contacted Knott's Berry Farm and said, Knott's Berry Farm, we understand you have the John Wayne Theater, which is now the Walter Knott Theater. We understand it's environmentally controlled, it's got a movie projector. Can we have Seymour perform there? Knott's Berry Farm said, that's a great idea, we love it. In fact, we'll build a Halloween event around Seymour. And voila, that was the birth of Knott's Halloween Haunt, now known as Knott's Scary Farm. And this clicker, there we go, Knott's Halloween Haunt, now known as Knott's Scary Farm. And from the very beginning, the park dove into the concept of a large-scale Halloween party. All the employees participated. The log ride was turned into Satan's Sawmill, and the Calico Mine ride was turned into the Haunted Mine. And those were like the main scare attractions in the early days of Scary Farm, packed with live actors terrorizing everybody. And then there was the now defunct attraction, the Haunted Shack. Oops, we went too far, sorry. The Haunted Shack, we all missed the Haunted Shack. Well, sorry, the Haunted Shack, it went away. But they had live actors, as well as Ghost Town had the very first Scare Zone monsters and on the planet, and they were the Wild West stunt show personnel dressed as monsters and to roam the streets. And in the early days, they had all kinds of sideshows and entertainment and carnival illusions and magicians. They repurposed the stunt shows, and they had live bands and dancing, all kinds of live entertainment. Every single store and employee participated and dressed up, from food services. Let's see if we can get some photos of these. Oh, there we go. Here we go. Food services to merchandise to ticketing to ride operators. Everybody participated and dressed up. And in addition to that, the buildings outside of Ghost Town, well, those were turned into the startling pecans with eerie lighting and sound effects and masks on the mannequins. And outside of those buildings, well, the park decoration was just wonderful. The Ghost Town became shrouded in scare cloth and more eerie lighting and sound effects. Oh, can you hit the next slide for me manually? We may have to do it that way because I think the bathroom would be out here. But anyways, Ghost Town was shrouded in fog and all that. Knott went all in. By 1977, they introduced the first maze built solely for Knott's Scary Farm, named the 10 Chilling Chambers. The Chilling Chambers for short. And yeah, and so that maze that we used gathered for the event, because every single Knott's Scary Farm maze that came after can trace its roots back to the Chilling Chambers. And after Seymour hosted the first two haunts, other celebrity hosts got involved. People like Wolfgang Jack, yeah, and Weird Al Yankovic, and the longest running host in Knott's Scary Farm's history, Elvira. Yes, we love Elvira. Well, by the 1980s, the event grew with more monsters and things like sliders in the Ghost Town Scare Zone, and the monster looks were becoming more advanced and identifiable as Knott's Scary Farm monsters. And by the late 1980s, well, the event grew with more and more mazes, and that was to accommodate the massive swarms of crowds attending Knott's Scary Farm. These mazes had more identity with their names and early forms of storytelling, but that paved the way to the powerhouse mazes of the 1990s. Legendary classics like Lair the Vampire, go ahead and hit the next slide, Dominion of the Dead, Nightmares, Industrial Evil, so many legendary mazes that really kind of established the high quality in maze design we see today at the event. And in time, other scare zones were added aside from Ghost Town, like the Gauntlet, Swamp, Carnival, Silver Bullet Mine Town, others like Necropolis. So all of a sudden, the event was covering the entire park to make way for groundbreaking mazes like the Carnival of Carnivorous Clowns in 3D. Go ahead and hit the next slide there. As well as classics like the Asylum, and 13 Acts Murder Manor, and Doll Factory, Trick or Treat, and so many more that raised the production value of these different mazes. And soon, interactivity would be added with attractions like Trapped and the Skeleton Key Rooms, and those led to Infected and Bloodline, where the guests became active participants within the attractions. And throughout the years, the show productions grew from The Hanging to Puppet Up to Zamora and Dr. Cleaver to the Misfit of Magic, Ed Alonso, who performed on the same stage, which is so awesome. Well, these eventually, theatricality would be added with attractions like Paranormal Incorporated, go ahead and hit the next one there, as well as The Hollow, Forsaken Lake, Origins, The Grimoire, and that, my dear friends, The Birdcage, in a nutshell, brings us up to date. Whew, I told you it was going to go like that. obviously that's just scratching the surface. Thousands and thousands of factors go into making Knott Scary Farm what it is today, but that's a general summary. So now that we're up to date, let's talk about some of the announcements. I'm going to talk about a couple of the attractions I worked on and some of the inspiration and how they tie back to the event's history. So first up is Cinema Slasher. Are we excited for Cinema Slasher? So, the inspiration behind Cinema Slasher is pretty straight ahead. For years, people have been saying, "Oh, the Knott Scary Farm is like walking through your very own horror movie." And so we thought, well, geez, what if we did that? So I conceptualized this attraction with industry designer John Cook. I wrote it, he designed it. We love John Cook, yes. And then it was overseen by Ken Parks, who's the corporate director of creative development for Cedar Fair, the parent company of Knott's Berry Farm. And we worked very closely with the eventual co-designer and art director assigned to the project here at Knott's, Daniel Miller. So to reiterate the basic premise, Cinema Slasher invites guests into a local movie theater that's proudly hosting its Trio of Terror Film Festival. All three films star the most famous masked horror villain of all time, the Slasher of the Dark. The only problem is this movie theater burned down 50 years ago on this very night and has mysteriously reappeared. So guests go inside this theater and go through the screens and find themselves trapped within the worlds of these three movies. The three movies are Trick or Treat, Camp Gonna Get You, and Slaughterhouse. So will they succumb to the evil Slasher of the Dark? Or will they find themselves trapped forever in this very haunted theater? So there are tons of references to Knott Scary Farm's past with that brief description I just shared, starting with the main antagonist, the Slasher of the Dark. So the Slasher of the Dark that we see here, that was a Knott Scary Farm overlay to the Kingdom of the Dinosaurs attraction back in 1994 and 1995. It was about a serial killer attacking people in a theme park dark ride. Fast forward many years later in 2016, when the Skeleton Key rooms became standalone miniature scare experiences. Go ahead and hit the next one. One of them was named Slasher, which was about a 1980s serial killer attack. So our main antagonist for Cinema Slasher is inspired by those past characters. And the three movies we go into are inspired by past Scary Farm attractions. The first up is Trick or Treat, and that allowed guests to go into the Green Witch's house, Sarah Marshall's house, but it was modernized, and we were attacked by her evil minions, the Tricksters. In our variant, they go into the house, but it's a sorority house where there's a massive college Halloween party taking place, and the Slasher of the Dark is attacking. So it's got your typical horror movie tropes, but it's kind of our nod to like the classic 1970s slasher movies. The second one is Camp Gonna Get Ya. And so that was a Knott Scary Farm overlay to the Timber Mountain log ride from 1996 through 2000. And it was kind of like evil scouts taking over the mountain. In our version, guests go to like a forest summer camp that's under attack by another variation of the Slasher of the Dark. So it's kind of our ode to like the classic 1980s summer camp slasher movies. Now, the last one, Slaughterhouse. Well, the first time Slaughterhouse appeared as a Knott Scary Farm maze was way back in 1987 in the Fairy Tales Playhouse over in Camp Snoopy. And it was kind of like a Bloody Butcher type of thing. And many years later, also in Camp Snoopy, another version of Slaughterhouse came around that ultimately became Uncle Willie's Barbecue Slaughterhouse. It's a lot of blood and guts. The inspiration behind our version is more of like the torture porn films of the 2000s. So just over the top gore. So consider yourselves warned. But as you can imagine, myself and John Cook and Daniel Miller and Ken Parks, we had a great time reimagining those past themes for Cinema Slasher. The next one is the Chilling Chambers. Are you excited for Chilling Chambers? So the Chilling Chambers is a tribute in name alone to the first maze built solely for Knott Scary Farm, which you just learned about back in 1977. And just like Cinema Slasher, I conceptualized this with John Cook and Ken Parks, and we worked very closely with the eventual co-designer and art director assigned to the project here at Knott's, Gus Kruger. So, if you were born and you were old enough to go to Knott's Scary Farm back in 1997 for the 25th anniversary. Go ahead and hit the next one. You might have gone through the 25th Shiver anniversary tribute maze, and it was a lot of fun. But go ahead and hit the next one. There, it was kind of like a hodgepodge of past themes, and it was fun, but we were looking at trying to do something that had a little more narrative cohesion, because we have these bits and pieces of past attractions all kind of thrown together in one venue with themes that have nothing to do with each other. Well, we wanted to find a way to kind of pull that together. And so one of the tools that we've implemented to try and help us accomplish that is we created a narrator, a host for the Chilling Chambers, who you met earlier, the Keeper. And so the Keeper is a tribute to the first host of Knott's Scary Farm, Sinister Seymour. So go ahead and hit the next one there, yeah. And so the Keeper is a brand new character inspired by Seymour, but the Keeper is more on the creepier side of things, more on the scarier side of things, sinister, macabre. But he works as a way to inform the guests as to what they're seeing when they go through this attraction. Go ahead and hit the next one. Yeah, because we realize not every Scary Farm generation is going to be familiar with these past themes inside the Chilling Chamber, so he works as a way to help pull things together. So myself and John Cook, and Gus, and Ken, and the rest of the very talented team putting this all together, we're very excited for you to check out the Chilling Chambers. Now there's one last thing that I wanted to share before we wrap it up. I mentioned at the top of all of this that I spent several seasons as one of the sliding monsters in the Ghost Town Scare Zone. My character was a werewolf named Rage. So there's Rage 1.0 there on the right with the green witch. Then after a couple of seasons, they customized and created a prosthetic that they would glue to my face every night. So that's Rage 2.0 on the left. But it's kind of a fun show and tell. If you want to bring up the lights a little bit, I brought my original Rage 1.0 mask. Yeah. As well as one of my 2.0 prosthetics, as well as a couple of pieces of my costume, like my original sliding gloves that I use. And, these things help me terrify thousands of people throughout the years. But one of the reasons I brought this stuff is because all the years I went as a guest before I was ever involved, I never got to see any of this stuff. I mean, we didn't have a legacy store, museum, or announcement events. So I brought these historic relics to share, but now that you've gotten to know me a little bit over the past few minutes, I also brought these along as a fun, friendly reminder that there's humans behind the mask, and there's humans behind the scenes of Knott's Scary Farm that make the magic of Knott's Scary Farm. Since 1973, thousands of extremely talented people have made Knott's Scary Farm what it is today. And all of us who are involved now, well, we stand on the shoulders of those pioneers. But none of that means anything without you, the fans of Knott's Scary Farm. Think about the very first time you ever locked eyes with a Knott's Scary Farm monster, or the first time you ever heard the rattle of a shaker can, or saw a slider sliding up to you. Think about all the laughs and screams that you've shared with family and friends throughout the years at Knott's Scary Farm. This 50th anniversary celebration is dedicated to those memories, and it's dedicated to all of you. On behalf of Knott's Scary Farm, I'm Ted Dougherty. Thank you so much.